Hey, what's going on, tribe? This is Chris McHugh coming to you from San Diego, the founder of the Tribe of One. And I was on a dog walk this morning, and I thought of some expressions as they started coming into my mind, and how I was like, since there is no expression without a duality or another way to look at it, I thought I'd kind of dissect a few of these so that we could just have an alternative perspective. So the first one I've got down here is, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Oh, I hate this expression. Urgh. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Is basically a confirming statement for the individual saying it. In other words, this individual is threatened by a person doing something that they wouldn't do, and they're threatened by having people that they consider friends around them that are doing things they wouldn't do. So therefore, they're affirming to the individual, I'm just letting you know that I wouldn't do that, and it's almost like a warning potentially of like, keep this up and I might not be around. Another one is, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Now, I can appreciate the security of knowing that you have something, but if all you do is focus on always having something in your hand, life will give you an opportunity not to have it so that you can move into that bush and figure out how to catch those birds on your own. So it's a kind of silly expression in a sense too. But I could see some value in it a little bit. Saving is important to some degree, but not being too attached to having that. Having a savings of faith is important. The grass is always greener. No, it isn't. But yes, it is. I mean, you're never going to know better than what you have until you move outside of what you have. The funny thing about the way I've experienced life is that you move from brown grass to desert only to find the greenest grass. It's almost like you have to go through that stage of not having to test your faith. But you should move because you can't stay on any one piece of land for very long before the grass does turn brown. It's just the way of things, regardless of what you might do to keep it green. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, isn't that funny? It almost confirms that we are all one, and that really any enemy is betraying yourself in not seeing the ignorance in the other person. Even if they're culpable, it just shows that they don't have the broadness of awareness to see that their actions don't stop at some certain point that they limit themselves to, this being the enemy, and that in actuality there is no enemy, and that if we participate in this, we are this. It's about helping our enemy realize they are not our enemy. That, I think, is the real way to handle this situation. The harder you work, the luckier you get. One of the things I've realized as I've moved into faith is that there is bliss in every moment for us. It is us who gets in our own way through expectations, judgments, and definitions that we place upon ourselves. Who's to say that great things can't happen from relaxed and consistent effort? That's been my experience. The analogy I use is, you can plant a lemon tree and see it grow within a month. And a lemon tree isn't much of a tree at all. It's a bush, and it's bitter, right? An apple tree takes longer. It has a single stalk. It's a true tree. But many people don't have the patience to sit and cultivate and tend to a seed that takes, 4 months to start to show promise. A stitch in time saves 9. The idea that if I'm so focused in this moment on getting the most out of it and extracting the most out of it, that somehow that's going to make my life easier moving forward. And there's some truth to that, being present, being in the moment. But there's a distinction between being present and being in the moment and trying to be present and in the moment, which creates anxiety. It's kind of a paradox in its own way, isn't it? But my recommendation is, there is no time but right now. And the illusion of the future is what creates the very anxiety. So that's why I'm not huge on that expression. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. Well, that sounds great, but the problem with that is, what if you don't treat yourself well? What if you don't give yourself and share self-love with yourself? Well, then you're sharing that anyway. So this actual expression really doesn't do much except for encourage people to try. And my recommendation is don't try. Be yourself. If you're an asshole, be an asshole until you feel you get the karma that reinforces for you. It's probably not a good way to go through life. But you wouldn't have known that unless you tried. So it's about honoring the prodigal son's story of resistance and having to learn it their own way. I love it when people say no and tear off the bindings of indoctrination and say, I'm going to learn this my own way. They may end up learning the very same thing, but then it's true to them. And that's really what our civilization needs. Not traditions, but knowing of traditions. Like, I've lived it. I know that this works for me. But I'm not going to press it on someone else. I'm going to let them learn for themselves. And then, if you want something done right, do it. This is the last one. If I want something done right, I'm going to do it myself. This is probably the worst false, erroneous reinforcement of separation. Yes, at times when you do something, it's going to give you cause and effect. It's going to give you the appearance of success. But that success, of course, is determined by the mind. There is no undertaking, I'm going to say this because I feel compelled, that stands to the glory of God. But when men come together to do great works, look at the pyramids. Look at Steve Jobs in Apple. He couldn't have done it alone. Can you imagine him in his basement tinkering away? He would have been like the Unabomber, for goodness sakes. So I think it's really important to understand that we are a communal organism. That when we are synchronized to light consciousness, we are one. And when we are synchronized to animal consciousness and separation and survival, we are, well, separate. We are many, and we are one. And at the same time, all is many. So it's about balancing these two relationships within your life. But which comes first? Always the seeming other. Looking out, but never to the detriment of thine own self, because you need to honor yourself through self-love and knowing what that means in every moment. And the easiest way to do it, instead of thinking about it, is feel about it. What is your body telling you in this moment that you need? So I hope this helped. I hope this kind of cleared up some of the other side of these expressions. That's not to take away from them. The other side is true as well. But remember, with the yin-yang, there's a negative aspect to every positive, and there's a positive aspect to every negative aspect. So, again, peace, love, and trust, brothers and sisters. Namaste.